Hello there, Mandy here. Restorative Grief with Mandy Capehart is not just a podcast. It's also a book, a free online grief group, and a one-on-one private coaching practice. If you are interested in learning more, visit mandykapehart.com to find out how restorative grief can help you heal heart, mind, body, and spirit. Welcome back to Restorative Grief with Mandy Capehart. You are listening to episode 221, titled When Love Feels Far Away, Enneagram Wisdom for Estrangement with Jackie Contessa. What if personal growth doesn't necessarily mean becoming someone new, but learning to stay steady in who you already are? This week, I'm sitting down with Jackie Contessa, certified Enneagram coach and founder of Table for Nine Coaching, and we are talking about all things estrangement and how the Enneagram can offer stability through the ever-changing landscape of life. Jackie shares a little bit of her story of discovering the Enneagram after years of loss, estrangement, and transformation. So whether or not you are someone who has experienced estrangement or has become estranged from someone by your own choice, this conversation can be a gentle guide back toward yourself as you choose whether or not you'll go back toward others. Hi, everybody. Welcome back to Restorative Grief with Mandy Capehart. I am your host, Mandy. It sounded so robotic. I am your host, Mandy. Let me try again. Hi, everyone. Welcome back to Restorative Grief with Mandy Capehart. I'm your host, Mandy, and today I am joined by my friend and Enneagram coach, Jackie Contessa. She's the founder of Table for Nine Coaching, and she is this brilliant mind and insightful heart who helps people who have already found where they land on the Enneagram so that they can go from knowing their type into becoming a newer and richer expression of themselves. She is funny and honest and refreshingly real. So talking with her feels like talking with anyone you've known the longest time in your life, as I could tell you a story just about as we were chatting offline. So today we're going to talk about all kinds of things related to grieving and estrangement through a kind of lens of the Enneagram. Just talk about how it can really help us through seasons of tension and grief and loss. So Jackie, welcome to Restorative Grief.
Oh my goodness. Thank you for having me on. And yes, I'm 100% sure I definitely want to be friends. Thank you for that intro. It was very, very nice.
Oh, you're so welcome. I have to say it truly is good to find people in the world that feel like safety. And especially when
Yeah.
we're grieving any kind of relationship, death, loss, transition, change in our lives, safety is the first thing we are looking for, which is why frameworks like the Enneagram seem really approachable and really simple, right? We're looking for a
hmm
definition. So why not a personality framework to help us with that? So talk to me about why you choose specifically to work with people who've already found their type where they lead from on the Enneagram.
Oh, yes. Okay. So personally, I mean that starts from being a personal user of the Enneagram before I became a coach. Like I felt like I could coach because I got myself from A to at my time that's Z, right? And that changes. But I was like, oh, I did this because of the Enneagram, what the Enneagram allowed me to see. So that was really where I like to start with people. I feel like where you start tells me so much more about what you're doing. People love to tell me, oh, I think I'm this type because I do this. I think I'm this type because I do this. And I'm like, well, where do you start? Because that will tell me where you're going as opposed to what you're doing. So I think that's very important in every journey. And, you know, estrangement's sort of part of that journey. Grief is part of that journey. And so the Enneagram is really important there. I'm really interested in where you're going and whether or not it's where you want it to go. The
Yeah.
Enneagram will tell us that, you know?
Yeah. That's what I love about it as a framework because it is expansive. And I
hmm
think with our understanding of our loss and as we get to know the type of loss and the way we respond in loss, everything in the world seems to get a lot smaller. I was just talking with a client who was telling me, yeah, I'm realizing my circle is shrinking because people do not understand how to go with me and I'm not sure how to show back up with them and figure out what I'm going through. So, how would you um, bring Enneagram work to
Mm,
someone who knows their type and is talking about like, hey, the world is getting very small and my
yeah.
viewpoint is getting very small. How do I kind of push back and create some expansiveness for myself to grow again?
Sorry, it's 5 o'clock. So the way that I would when I first start working with somebody, um, they think that they're the problem in every situation for the most part. Even the types you wouldn't think, they believe, and to some degree, they come in with the right idea. I
Mm.
can only change myself, right? So I'm gonna do what I can. I'm gonna do what I can. What that does though, and how that sort of helps is yes, we can only control ourselves in any given situation, which means we can only work towards being us, being who we are, using the Enneagram as that platform. That also tells us that maybe our world has to get smaller because we can't, we were talking about this before, we can't change so much 200% that we're making up for people who cannot change,
Yeah.
who are, we're making up for people who cannot adjust. And so a smaller world is scary, especially if we see it that way. Sometimes we have to see it as a little bit more localized to what's authentically us. It is so much safer to have a localized world, especially through the Enneagram, what's authentic, than to have 1,000 fixtures that, or 1,000 people that feel like community, that feel like your tribe, that feel like anything, but aren't to the authentic you. There's a cost to role playing, and it's funny because I think we hear we hear things like this and we think people pleasing types or image oriented types or this kind of types, that kind of types. But I'm going to talk the most extreme, right? Eight. We never refer to, for example, eights as like playing a part or playing a role or such and such. But sometimes there's that lack of a desire for things to change. And playing a role means being the stronger one or being the one that's like, okay, like I'm willing to do the work. And so I'll see both sides and that'll be the bigger person. And yes, that's true, but we can't. Sometimes our world getting or feeling smaller is a result of the right kind of pruning. And it's not always forever, but the Enneagram basically shows us who we are, who we are right now in relation to who we are meant to be, and where we are along that journey. And sometimes when we're not in the right place, we can sort of collect and try to fit with certain people and things. And when we start aligning to where we're meant to go, we can grieve the loss of those things while saying, these weren't meant for us. That is so sad, but it's okay.
Yeah. God, you said so many wonderful things in there that I want to call back to. The cost to people pleasing is so foundational and grounding in. I just tried to make the word groundational, just to be clear.
I like it. Pass.
Okay, groundational. The cost of people pleasing is so much higher than we realize. And
Yeah.
you describing even like the eight trying to see both sides to make amends and make things work completely landed for me because throughout the years, and we'll talk about this lens of estrangement, right? Throughout the years of recognizing which relationships can I move toward, where do I have safety, where do I have belonging, not just this reshaping of
Yeah.
myself to fit in, the urge, especially in low tolerance moments of life when we're tired, when we're sick, when we're lonely, when our emotions are just untethered and less grounded and connected to what we want, it is so easy to even go back to those strategies that we've used in the past to create safety and create our sense of self and connection. So, thinking about it from that lens, how can a person use Enneagram knowledge to not just recognize, hey, am I moving toward others before I'm moving toward self, but to put it into words
Mm.
as to not justify why they're moving back toward themselves instead of toward others only, but to give themselves permission. Let me move toward myself before I keep trying to move
Yeah.
toward and repair with whomever I'm
Yeah.
estranged from.
Yeah. And that's, I think, really well said, moving towards self, because it's not the same thing as withdrawing. And because we always think repair is the best thing that you can do and withdrawing is the worst thing. There's a funny middle, right? Where we do have to come back to self just a little bit to understand. And one of the things I'll say is to like when people want to make something right, and I've heard a pattern of that. Okay, sidebar. Um, no one ever, quote me on this, no one ever does anything once. Caveat one, they cannot tolerate how they are anymore. That is the only time anyone will ever change. Outside of that, no one ever does anything once. They might stop doing a very specific act, but for whatever reason they did that one thing, it will keep repeating itself. No one ever does anything once. And I think when we want to repair, we want to consider repairing. Okay. We have to ask ourselves, do I want this situation to blow over or do I want to repair with this person? Okay. If I want to repair with this person or if I want to, have a conversation with this person, I have to ask, am I asking this person to be somebody they're not?
Mm.
Okay. How do we have any of those questions answered or pinging internally if we don't know where we start? And so the Enneagram, I don't think anybody can tolerate or should tolerate disrespect, but certain things come at certain levels. And Mandy, what you can tolerate and what I can tolerate are in two different places, but also situationally very, very different. So we have to know ourselves, where we start, what our values are, what our priorities are. That means that we have to connect with, in Enneagram, it's not called this, but our big fat why, right? The reason we do things, and then how we do our why. We need to connect to our own lines and limits. So we need to use something like the Enneagram, which, it's my preferred tool. I'll keep referring to it forever and ever and ever. But we can use that to go back to ourselves and go, well, why do I do the things that I do? Oh, okay. Well, what does that tell me about myself and the things that I value? Okay, so why I protect myself shows me I value vulnerability, but I also value the safety that comes with it and how scary it is to give it away. That also means I cannot conduct my relationships with people who are flippant with my God. And I have to know where I start
Yeah.
to go back out. I have to go within, not withdraw, not pull away, not get mysterious, not pull back because I'm waiting for an apology. I need to go within, ask myself who I am, ask myself who this person is, ask myself what it is that I'm doing, go back out and do what I need to do. Sometimes closing a loop doesn't, sometimes closing a loop doesn't mean repairing. Sometimes it means learning from that situation as data because you know where you start, even if you don't know where they start, even if you can't control them, doesn't matter. You know where you start, you know what your priorities and values are, you know what does not fill your cup. You can take a step back.
Mm. Jackie, I really want to stay on this concept of it's okay to not repair with people because I think the majority of folks who might hear that are even thinking, how can you tolerate calling yourself, quote unquote, a good person or saying you did your best if you're not actively trying to repair with everyone where relationship has ruptured? And I'm not talking about exes with whom you don't have an ongoing relationship. I'm talking about family members, that live in your immediate household, that don't live in your immediate house, people that you have some kind of social relationship to, and have a method or a time that you will, in fact, run into them again, a reason why you're going to interact with them. What does it look like for someone to start in those relationships showing up very authentically to themselves anyway, even though it's not relationships so much as, you know, disconnections, rather? Here's an example. I run into someone in public that I haven't seen in a long time and don't really feel deeply hurt that I haven't seen them in a long time. Maybe I
Mm,
did before, but now I've gone inward and done my own work, right? I got to a place where I said, I'm going to be authentically myself and not say anything I don't mean, which
Mm.
means I might not say, good to see you. It means I might not say, let's hang out or get coffee. I'd love to catch up. Because if that's not true, I'm not going to put that out there. What it has resulted in is me staring at people on accident and thinking, oh my God, I'm about to talk about the weather. I I don't know. I don't know how to do this better. What are ways that
Mm.
we could approach ourselves? And maybe Enneagram language helps here too, where we're
Yeah.
like, it's okay that I don't want to repair with this person,
Mhm.
but now what? Really?
Yeah, no, and that's the thing. I think you can decide the now what once you decide you don't have to do anything that you don't want to do, but also people are not entitled to a relationship with you just because you were weighing whether or not you should give them one. Period. And so I think when I hear about because I think it's really valid on the inside to want to say, how could you not want to try everything to repair?
Yeah.
Some and I think that's okay and that's valid, but we have to be honest about where that comes from. If that comes from wanting cohesion, what does cohesion actually mean? It doesn't mean one person being bigger and the other person putting their bottom lip over their head and swallowing it or whatever. But about peace, oh, it's family or it's this or it's that. We have to define what these things mean and if it's fair for everybody. And if it's not fair for everybody, then we have to understand that to some degree we are projecting. I've had a lot of conversations with people where I've said, hey, when you say, but it's your family, what do you mean? And they'll go, oh, but family this, but family that. And I'll nod and I'll nod and I'll nod and I'll nod and I'll say, is that your experience with your family? And they say, yeah. And I said, but you can't, that's not my experience. I have no idea what you're talking about. And they
Yeah.
look at me like I'm shocked. And so that's not to play yours or mine. That's to say that we have to understand that sometimes we are projecting onto people when we tell them that they have to have a relationship with somebody else. We are projecting what we think we're going to be held accountable for. We have to project how scary it feels to be in conflict or people not be together. We have to be honest with ourselves how much other people's anger scares us. But the truth is that we are not owed anything. So if or we are not we do not owe anyone anything. We can simply decide, hey, based on data, based on how you and I have got on or lack thereof, based on our experiences, based on the things that have happened, that have not changed, I have enough data to say this is not going to change again. And I don't have a desire to go through this again. I've stated that. It hasn't been heard or listened to. I feel like I can see myself out. I feel like that's reasonable. Personally, life coach here. I think it's reasonable. Boop, boop. But at the same time, sometimes scripts help, right? You run into somebody at the mall and you go, funny seeing you here because it is. And that's just
Yeah.
about it. And you go, I hope you take care of yourself because you do.
Yeah.
And then you walk away. And I'll tell you right now too, if you walk away and if you're an Enneagram two, like and softy like me and you're listening to this and you walk away and you're like, oh, I should I have said this or maybe I should just it was nice to see them, it wasn't so bad. That's because you have a boundary in place. That's not a sign that you're doing something wrong by not being nicer or not reaching out more. That's what boundaries do. They make you feel right. So the way I define is a boundary is just a life rule that teaches the people you love and the people you don't how to access the best side of you if you want them to have it. That's it. And so you have your boundary, and that's why it can feel okay to see people and not have a relationship or a repair with them because we love civility and we don't need war. But that doesn't mean we need relationships with everybody. And sometimes that comes with grief. And one of the best ways to manage that grief is to know where we start. So as a two, I start in being like, man, hate saying this out loud, but I get my sense of self from my closest relationships. And every battle I have is my fight to not do that.
Mm.
And if I have to think to myself, do I want to salvage this relationship? Do I want to repair? I have to think, what is this going to do to my sense of self? Does this person have boundaries in that they'll respect my boundaries when I set them?
That
Do they
question is
respect
so huge.
do they respect their own emotion? Because I'm friends with a lot of eights. I said this to one of my closest friends who's an eight, shout out Elena, the other day. I was like, you know why I like to be friends with you right now? because you set boundaries, which means you can be trusted with your feelings, which means you can be trusted with mine.
Yeah.
So there's so much to think about in grieving, in estrangement, in why do I owe somebody a relationship? Go back to where you start. This is why Enneagram is such a lovely tool. It can take us where we want to go, but also if you want to go somewhere different, your foundations need to be looked at. And sometimes those foundations include boundaries, they include relationships that don't need to be happening anymore. Sometimes it includes cuts. And actually, sometimes it does include repairs. Sometimes it's, holy shiza, I was wrong,
Mhm.
and going back, right? And I think Enneagram is such a beautiful tool. However, back to your question, because I ranted a little bit. If you're not wanting to see someone run, if you don't want to repair with somebody, don't. You have my permission.
It's wild, even just thinking about how much emotionality you're discussing, right? I've had conversations with people about their boundaries and in a regulated state, right here, this safe conversation. It's easy for us to say, yeah, I'm going to very calmly tell you, I see that you're there. I've been quoting Austin Powers a lot lately, where he says, hey, that there you are. And the stranger says, oh my gosh, do I know you? And his response is no, but that's where you are. You're there. It makes me think that every time, like, there you are in the world,
Hmm.
being who you are. I have such a love of being emotionally engaged and open and sharing emotions and holding space for people's big emotions. And I know that that makes people ultimately very uncomfortable because, like you pointed out, we love niceness and civility, and it's completely undercutting our ability to have real relationships and to admit to one another, actually, we don't get along. Actually, we
Hmm.
have core value differences that are compromising our ability to respect one another. Or, like I pointed out, rudely interrupting you, sorry about that, of you don't have the same kind of adherence or need of expressing boundaries in the way that I do. That doesn't mean that you're bad or I'm good. It just means that our ability to relate is going to be lopsided because if I'm standing here holding a strong boundary and your boundaries are undefined or
Hmm.
uncommunicated or porous and
Yeah.
really flexible based on the moment, it will be difficult to trust any type of repair or any expression
Yeah.
of vulnerability in this relationship.
Yes. I think too, like one of the route to wonderful connections is the risk that we take in learning that people can say that they're for us when they're not. And, I'll, one of the clients I've worked with recently has talked about, the betrayal of a really long-standing relationship and wanting to go back to, and it wasn't a romantic one, it was a familial one, and wanting to go back to this relationship, right? And one of the discussions we've had recently was how much do we learn about who somebody is in how it ends or how they choose to handle certain things.
Mm,
And it's not necessarily that that's all we can deduce a person's character by. No, but we have, again, the word data. We have enough data. We have enough evidence to support that until this person makes a change in this area, when you come across this issue again, they will handle it this way again. And this way of handling things is so painful to you, perhaps, because it is not true of what you thought that this relationship was going to be or was supposed to be. And we have to keep in mind too, when we stay in relationships, repair is beautiful, forgiveness is gorgeous. When we stay in relationships in any one-to-one where we are not being treated the way we know we should be treated, and we stay, we have to make up for the difference. We have to we will start to see ourselves as deficient. We have to make up for why we are still in a place where we are being treated a very specific way. Right. And so also say this, I say this often. You don't have to wait till things are the worst they could possibly be to do something, to change, to move, to leave, but talking about grief, we have to also keep in mind that every single one of those things does include grief. And when I talk to people, we talk about repair and how it's great and this, that, and the other thing. But when I say staying hurts and has a stuff ton of grief, And going also has a stuff ton of grief. If both hurt, if staying and repairing hurts like a bee sting, and going and it never happening again because you have a boundary and you heal on your own also has hurts like a bee sting. What do you want? What would you choose?
Yeah.
And a lot of people, if they're being honest, would not choose to be treated the same way by the same person over and over and over and over again. And that's okay, even if there are family titles. That is okay.
Yeah. Yeah. Estrangement is such an ongoing grief event. We encounter holidays and we're reminded of it. We encounter birthdays and different lifetime markers, and we're reminded again and again. We hear about people being so happy and enjoying each other and see photographs, and we're reminded again and again. And I
Mm,
think that's something that's important too. So maybe we can just touch on this a bit. The estrangement on both sides of the table, right? The one who says, I'm
yeah.
setting a boundary until this situation is met, or until you are able to treat me in a way that feels good to me too. Please keep your distance,
Hmm.
or even unspoken boundaries, the passive kind where we just
Yeah.
step away. And fair, right? Nobody is owed an explanation. We can totally step back and say like, no, thanks,
Yeah.
I'm not interested. Um, but then the other side of that, the person who is now estranged from their people, from their family, from whomever it is, how can Enneagram help support people
Mm,
with some better questions? Not why did they reject me, not what did I do so wrong, or why am I so terrible, what's wrong with me, not those open-ended, very nebulous, unhelpful questions, but
yeah.
in a way that doesn't result in that, that gut punch feeling when you first start learning about Enneagram and you're like, oh cool, this hurts, why do they know everything about me?
Hmm.
This feels wrong somehow. They got my diary. I made a whole personality typing process about it. um Not that kind of like smack around, but in the way that it really can reveal how we move toward integration without abandoning who we're becoming, just to, like you said,
Yeah.
make it make sense. So what is the person
Yeah.
wanting to just understand, not necessarily reconcile, going to get out of using the Enneagram as a
Mm.
tool?
Oof. Yeah. Well, so the self-understanding tells us so much. There are thousands of conversations I will never be able to go back and have, but can understand at least where I stood because of the Enneagram, right? And so that self-understanding just cannot be, I can't say it enough how important it is. I think the Enneagram allows us to see ourselves better, more clearly, in a more neutral way. When I first read about being a two, I was like, yay, helpful.
I'm
And then I was
so
like,
nice.
and then I was like, boom, manipulative, tomato, tomato, tomato. Um, that was hard for me,
Yeah.
right? And one of the first things that I did was I have to just see this as neutral or I'm going to throw up and I'm not going to do anything. And I thought to myself, well, if my tooth is loose and I wiggle it, wiggle it, wiggle it, wiggle it, wiggle it to make it come out faster, I have manipulated it, and it just means something about me, but doesn't necessarily mean I'm a bad person. And I had to figure out what that something about me was. And so I think one of the most beautiful things that the Enneagram does, if we are willing to give it a minute and not take things so personally, is it makes who we are, where we start, and where we could go very neutral. Hey, as a person, these are the things that really matter to you. This is where you start. And when you feel that this is at risk, this is where you can go. And when you feel this is at its best, it could be, this is what you look like. And when you can't get your needs met in the world, blah, 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 blah. Okay. This is who you are. Neutral, neutral, neutral. And that's a beautiful place to see what we've done in relationships. Now, the hope is, and the first thing I'll say is I work with both sides. I work with people who have gone no contact with people in their lives or been estranged. And I work with people who are respecting that boundary and hoping and praying that that person comes back, right?
Mhm.
I've worked with both sides. And so I respect the grief that comes with both sides, right? Setting that line and also honoring that line. When somebody tells you, this is how I've been hurt, this is what you've done, and we go back with our intention, we're not really hearing them. We know, they know we didn't mean to throw the axe at them. They know, but they're saying that the axe hurt because it landed right there. When we look at the Enneagram and the Enneagram goes, hey, sometimes you get really scared and you think the threat's coming from outside you. So you pick up the axe and you swing it. Does that sound familiar? And we go, yeah, but I don't mean to, but that's not necessary anymore. And so sometimes the Enneagram can help us look at what we do. Now, the reason that's important is I know this for my life and I know this for clients' lives. And I've said this to my clients, right? I'll talk about let's say a parent who is wishes they could still contact their adult child, but the adult child wants to be estranged, for example. And they'll say, I want to go to therapy for us. So we have to go together. And I'll say, no, you have to go to therapy for you. No, 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 but I want to go for us. No, I understand that you want to go for us. But as long as you go for us, right? For us in quotes, like for them and their child, it's not going to work. There's no relationship to save if there's no individual. There's no individual if we don't know our values, our priorities, our why. Go do that first. Then you know who you're bringing to those sessions if you're lucky and blessed enough to do that. Right now, we have to be honest and say that some people have committed some things that like we can't go back and undo or redo. And we can absolutely hope for the best and respect the boundaries that are put into place. But it's so important that we grieve that if we're feeling the grief of it. And if we want to be different and do different, not to earn someone back, but because we can't tolerate how we were anymore, it's so important to go, well, where do I start and why did I do it? Not what was not my worst intention. I didn't mean to, no one's judging you for what you didn't mean. Promise, promise. No one's judging you at all. I just think it's so important to go, why did this matter to me? What was at stake? Why did I have to control? Why did I have to blame? Why couldn't I be wrong?
Why couldn't I be wrong? I loved the idea of kind of depersonalizing how we read the Enneagram in order to become more personally aware and responsible for ourselves as time goes on, as we learn a little bit more about how the lens can really serve us. The idea that we are, in fact, autonomous and capable and insightful and wonderful humans despite our worst moments and worst decisions is something that I think culturally we've kind of lost. And it might be
Mm,
because of the stark contrast of how people see one another and have continually othered, um, much to our continued failure as a culture. Um, and there might be a lot more to it. But I think that softness that comes with realizing I can see this person, this archetype, this Enneagram type as reflective and as someone I would care for is such a powerful gift to the version of us that wants peace with all the people in our lives, that wants to actually like who we are, right? When you said, oh, yeah, the two, to be able to reframe this understanding of manipulation as not a good or a bad thing necessarily, but just as this is an act, I'm manipulating a tooth to wiggle it out, made me feel so relieved to think about the ways I have allowed anger in my life as a tool, right? Because I wield it like an easy tool in any situation, not because I'm trying to like bully my way through by any
mhm.
means, but as an eight, if someone's on edge expecting anger from me,
Yeah.
I can, hey, my mom and I used to joke about how our anger gets real quiet, real soft, and real slow, doesn't it? And my husband will say the same thing to me. He's like, no, you're actually a lot more authoritative when you are being honest and expressive.
Mm,
And even when you catch yourself mid sentence and say, hold on, this is out of line. Give me a minute. I need to breathe. I need to check back, whatever it is. Right. So that part of each of our types that we're like, oh, this is a good justification for
mhm.
why they walked away or why I'm walking away, whatever that is. It's such a permission to use the tool of Enneagram as a stabilizer and not
Hmm.
as just self critique in crisis.
100%. I'll say it firsthand. I'll fall right on the dagger and I'll say the more honest I am when I read about the Enneagram, and I still do personal Enneagram work to this day because every new stage of life, I feel like I'm starting over from type zero, like from my type at zero, right? Um, Sometimes I read these things and I read them at this my big age, and I think about a thing that a high school ex said to me at 15, and I was like, he was right. He was but and no he wasn't, but also at the same time, right, it is important to go, oh wow, I can go there, and I have, and it's really hard, but there comes the power to go, now I know, and I can't look the other way, and now I won't look the other way, right? So I think there's something beautiful there. If you read the Enneagram and you get offended, I'm so proud of you for
Yeah.
being that open and honest with yourself. Take it the next step further. So like that's the big one, right? And the other thing I'll say too is this is just me speaking personally, right? But if it set somebody free, it set somebody free. Forgiveness is a spiritual concept.
Yeah.
Okay. So that can happen in a lot of different ways. You can simply become indifferent towards a person and a situation and let it go,
Mhm.
right? And move on with no repair, no reconciliation, no conversation, no nothing, no forgiveness, no none of that, because forgiveness does has some absolving element, right? But you can become indifferent. You can forgive and repair and reconcile. You can forgive spirit on a spiritual level and not reconcile. I've seen some people reconcile without forgiving, call that a grudge, but it is what it is. But forgiveness is just a spiritual concept. And I'm not saying just because it's reductive, but if that's not a spirit part of your spiritual journey, it's okay to be indifferent and to say, I'm just going to let this go and give myself permission to not make contact with it anymore, to not give this person power anymore, to not give this thing real estate in my life and in my story right now at this time.
Yeah.
And that can just be as far as forgiveness goes. Forgiveness doesn't have to do with pretending a person is going to be something they're not in the future of your life. It doesn't have to be any of that stuff.
Mm. I think where people get really tripped up on that, and same is true with, the concept of rupture and repair, is feeling like I can't move forward in life if there are unanswered questions in my past, if there are unresolved conflicts with relationships. How can I be expected to do differently in a new relationship? How can I how can I build a healthy relationship with this family member if my relationship to this family member is not so great? And to say that you're the sole reason a relationship went downhill is a very below average energy frequency to function at, right? It's that we would both, you're smiling because we would both look at that person and say, beloved, what's your stress line on your number again for
Oh,
Enneagram type? Let's explore that just
well, my first
a little
question
bit.
is, oh my goodness, this whole thing's on you, isn't it? How
That's a
much are you
lot
getting
to wait.
paid? You getting paid per hour or what? Because my whole thing is you can control you. You can always be the healthiest, hate that word, but
Yeah.
the best you that you can reach for at any given moment that's available to you.
Yeah.
You can always be that person. You can never control how it's received, by whom it's received, on the day it's received, how much traffic they were just in, what they had for breakfast, or what their dad used to call them as a child. You cannot control any of that stuff.
Yeah.
And sometimes it is painful. Like we think that doing all this work on ourselves is going to exempt us from the grief of bringing all of our big, beautiful, messy, sort of we understand it, but sort of we don't selves to somebody else. And it's just going to be universally accepted because we did all that hard work. And sometimes the thing we get met with is somebody who didn't, who won't do that work.
Hmm.
And sometimes that goes, oh my God, the common denominator is me because both Susie and Sally, neither Susie nor Sally But in reality, Susie and Sally could be cousins because they won't deal with their problems. And we can find our Mandy, for example, who does the work. And we don't have to know each other for long or have absolutely everything in common. But we go, okay, so it is a quality over quantity thing. And I cannot take personally all of the things that didn't fit me. I do get personally offended when I go to the shoe store and all of the shoes that I like don't fit me. But then when I find a shoe that I really, really like and it's in my size and I don't have to force it, it does make up for the shoes that didn't fit me. Like one really good pair of shoes that fits just right. I, I'm not blaming my foot anymore for not fitting these shoes. You
I think
just
that's
need,
a really
yeah,
gentle metaphor.
yeah.
It's very relatable. I think
It's
it,
it's so easy to feel defective. It's so easy to like, I
yeah,
mean, it's what I was saying. Like if we stay in these relationships, if we find these things repeat, we find these patterns repeat, we have to convince ourselves that we're defective. We're the common denominator, that we have to be doing something differently in relationships. And sometimes I said this to a client the other day, hey, if we start hard, we have to stay hard and we become soft, um, we're not going to attract the people who wanted to be soft under us anymore.
yeah,
Right. And so sometimes when we change along the way or we realize who we are, it's not that we're wrong in the common denominator in relationships. It's that sometimes these relationships suited someone we're not anymore.
yeah,
New pair of shoes. And I'm not saying it because it's so easy to just get rid of like it's a pair of shoes. I'm just saying sometimes it's a matter of not fitting.
yeah. How would you help someone approach family members that they're estranged from? Because what we're talking about right now, a lot sounds like friendship relationships that we can choose.
Mm,
We don't always get to choose when we're around our families, and particularly if we're younger, there can be a lot of like cultural, like we still rely on relationships and
yeah.
that interconnectedness with family members, but we might not have that safety. How can we utilize the Enneagram to help us put some language to it without typing our family members who we don't know, or without like over explaining how Enneagram can help us heal? And here's what you need to do in order to come back into this relationship. And here's the ownership. Like, how can this help a person really lay their own foundation, continue to own their own work, but also offer it without, overly proselytizing what a great tool it can be?
Yeah, no, I think number one, you are gonna be the best you yourself are gonna be the best branding for anything that you love. That's, I mean, spoken like my true three wing, but like some will say you're the best gospel some people will ever read. Some will say you're the best Enneagram book some people will ever read. Some will say you're the best self-help podcast some people will ever listen to, right? So you be that tool. Um, you know what? I said this before, like there is really no us without a you, even though you feel like the us is what is killing you. Focus on the you. Let it feel selfish, let it feel bad, let it feel like you're putting your efforts in the wrong direction, but you must because to do anything from up, like to go anywhere ground up, you have to have a foundation and that foundation has to be you. That sounds bad, that sounds selfish, that sounds self-interested. God wouldn't want that. I don't care. That's not true. Okay? If you have an individuality, if you have a unique fingerprint, you have to start there. No one's exempt. Sorry. So, if I have a language for me, for why I do things, where I go, I can take ownership. I can live by example. I can invite other people to do the same. If I know where I can go, I can choose to not go there. I can live by example. I can advocate for what I need. I can say I am hurt here when this is happening. I'm asking for this to not happen anymore. When this happens, it hurts. I can take the shame off of other people. I can play my part in relationships, but I can also be honest with myself when people are unwilling or unable to change to play their parts and do what I have to do. But that's going to always take number one time. That's going to always come from a place of learning myself. Sometimes we're at a place where we can't separate from family because we don't have the means. We can't because it's a culture. Like for me, it's always been a cultural thing. I'm from a big fat Middle Eastern culture, and it's intertwined. Sometimes that can come with time, but it always starts from building on the inside. Boundaries are not these big walls that we throw up and we say, great, now she'll never see me again. They'll never see me again. No. Sometimes boundaries start with playing bingo when you go to a family member's house. And after five things in a row, you leave and you go, oh, forgot to feed the whatever lizard. Gotta go. Sometimes it's excusing yourself when you know, hey, I've done everything I could possibly do. I don't want to get kicked out of this house and I can't control this person and how they're going to react. I'm going to excuse myself.
Yeah.
Um, Knowing yourself, using the Enneagram to know this is where I start. This is ultimately what I'm the most afraid of happening. This is where I go to protect myself. This is what I do when I feel misheard by my family. This is the foundation. This is me. We can use that to go anywhere to protect ourselves. We can use that to preserve ourselves in healthy ways. We can use that to utilize our stress responses in the best ways. Point being, when we're sort of at the mercy of community guidelines and cultural this and respecting our elders and living in the, and but we also know we're not being treated the way we're supposed to be treated, we can control the one thing we can control, which is ourselves. So start with knowing that thing like an expert, and that's the Enneagram.
Really giving ourselves permission to make space to be misunderstood. And because we are willing to understand ourselves so deeply that we are willing to really give ourselves permission to go a little bit further with that pesky self compassion that makes us think, wow, I deserve to be treated better in the first place.
Yeah. And a lot of this too, and I will say this, keep doing the work even if you don't feel like people around you want to, or no one's caught up to thinking it's sexy or whatever. Because the truth is that it's not, I often say the Enneagram is just, it's an invitation to do things differently than you automatically do them. And some people don't like that because that automatic is really, really, really safe.
Yeah.
It's okay for you to keep your wheels turning in the direction you need to turn them in if other people don't do it. And it's okay if there's some grief. And I may have said this before. If not, I was definitely thinking it. But grief is not always, if ever, a sign to stop because you're doing something wrong. There's just a lot of emotion in one big ball called grief with you on the next step of the journey. Rarely have I ever heard grief whispering, go back, go back, go back, go back, go back, go back, go back. It's, this is what it looks like going forward, by the way. This is how scary it is going forward, by the way. This could be how sad it is going forward, by the way. But it's never saying, go back, go back, go back. But anyway, yes. Anyway, yes.
Jackie, what is one thing that you hope, and for anyone who's listening that knows their Enneagram type, um, what's one thing you wish that they all understood, or one thing you want them to go to next beyond just knowing their number?
Hmm.
Glasses off for contemplation and seriousness.
Ooh. Okay, so past knowing your number, past knowing your Enneagram type, and I'd love for you to sit with that for a while, but I think um the question I love to have people sort of sit on is why does this matter for me? Because what you'll do is you'll read a lot about archetypes. Twos love to do this because they need that. None of those things sound like Jackie, if I'm being honest, right? And when I sit there and I go, sometimes if people are not telling me in real time how much they're loving me, the thing in my head goes off and goes, see, I told you you're not lovable. And I need to outrun that timer. I need you to, one thing I'd say, and I'd love to leave you with is when you learn about your number, put it into your own words. Why does it matter to you? What does it feel like on the inside of you? What story does it tell? What's your big fat why? Like, your archetype's big fat why. What's yours? What does that mean? What did that look like in your childhood? What did that look like in Mandy's teen years? What did that look like? What is that inner messaging? And I think going there and going, okay, yeah, what does my personality type do what I do? But why do I do what I do? One of the biggest things that I do with people, we just answer two questions. Why do I do that? And how do I stop? Why do I do that? And how do I stop? And if you can say, why do I do that? You're literally halfway there. Literally.
Jackie, you are such a breath of fresh air. I think for as deep your well of knowledge of the Enneagram is, you also make it palatable and easy to approach for people who are interested, curious, wondering how they can stop and disrupt some behavioral patterns that are messing with their life and potentially with their relationship. So, if you're listening, and that includes you, beloved listener, you should reach out to Jackie because she's obviously brilliant. You can hear it in everything she says here. And it might be the right time for you, especially if you're dealing with any kind of estrangement in your life that's just feeling untenable or insurmountable or just confusing. Jackie, how can our beautiful listeners get in touch with you if they're interested?
Thank you so much. Oh my God. Thank you for the kind words. I really appreciate it. And thank you for trusting me and for having me on. It means a lot to be able to speak into some of the most vulnerable and honest work that people will do in their lives. So thank you so much. And people can connect with me. I'm on Instagram. It's at Table for Nine Co. It's FOR and the digit nine. I love DMs. Honestly, it takes me forever to get back to them, but I always get back to them. And I'm at JackieContessa.com. That's just about it. I love DMs. So find me there.
Hey, guys, she might want you to DM her because she will write back. And it is nice and long and juicy. So I highly recommend. Everybody, that's it for us today. Thank you so much for being here with us. And make sure you know, like and subscribe my channel, as my kid really wants to be on YouTube saying all the time, but I won't let her. All right. Love you, mean it. Bye, everybody. I know, right? Thank you for listening to episode 221 of Restorative Grief. I think Jackie's enthusiasm and honesty about Enneagram work and also about estrangement is a reminder that our story deserves gentleness, no matter what side of the estrangement we might find ourselves on. Grief work as an individual and in a family unit is always going to be messy because grief is messy, and that's okay. The work begins to clear itself up a little bit as you learn more about who you are and how you are intentionally showing up in your life and the lives of others, which is exactly why we love Enneagram framework as support for all the grief work and growth work we're doing. If this is your first time listening to the podcast, thank you so much for being here. I hope you'll choose to subscribe and stick around and listen to all the wonderful interviews and essays that we release every single week. Be sure to leave a 5-star review if you enjoyed what you heard so that others can find you as well. And check out the show notes to learn more about Jackie's work through Table for Nine coaching. Thank you as always to my patrons, because I could not do this without you. And as always, before we go, one last thing. Please remember, the only solution for grief is to do the work of grieving. Thanks for listening. I'll see you next week.